The Drakari were feared throughout the known galaxy. Their warrior culture, superior strength, and natural predatory instincts made them undefeated in combat. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with armored exoskeletons and venomous claws, they had conquered 17 systems and enslaved dozens of species. The Galactic Council, an alliance of over 200 alien civilizations, had failed repeatedly to contain the Drakari expansion. Commander Tai slammed his fist on the holographic display, causing the image of the fallen Nethari system to flicker. The room fell silent as the senior officers of the Galactic Defense Force watched their leader struggle to maintain composure. "That's the third system this cycle," Tai said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Nethari defense fleet was completely destroyed. No survivors." Jiho, Tai's strategic advisor, stepped forward. "The Drakari have adapted to our shield frequencies again. They punched through the orbital defenses like they weren't even there." Around the war room, representatives from a dozen allied species shifted uncomfortably. The Volari delegate, with his translucent skin showing stress patterns, spoke. "Up. My world is next in their expansion path. We need solutions, not more reports of failure." Tai nodded grimly. "Show them the latest footage." Jiho activated a video feed captured by a scout ship. The room watched in horror as a Drakari battle cruiser tore through a civilian transport vessel. The Drakari warriors, with their distinctive black exoskeletons and yellow eyes, moved with terrifying efficiency as they boarded another ship. "They don't just conquer," Jiho explained. "They hunt. It's not just about territory for them. It's about proving their superiority as predators." A detailed tactical display appeared, showing the Drakari advance across the sector. 17 conquered systems glowed red, with 8 more highlighted in yellow, worlds directly in the path of the coming invasion. Military advisor Hoon pointed to the defensive line that had just collapsed. "We lost 40% of our fleet, a strength in this engagement alone. At current rates, we cannot replace ships fast enough to maintain a defensive posture." The council chamber doors slid open, and a messenger rushed in. He whispered something in Tai's ear that made the commander's expression darken further. "I've just received word that the Drakari fleet has changed course," Tai announced. "They're bypassing the Volari system and heading directly for Sanctuary Station." Gasps echoed around the room. Sanctuary Station was the largest civilian habitat in the sector, home to refugees from worlds already conquered by the Drakari. "They're not just targeting military assets anymore," Jiho realized. "They're sending a message." The station's holographic image rotated above the table, a massive structure housing over 3 million civilians from dozens of species. The Drakari fleet would reach it within days. "We must evacuate them," suggested one official. "There's no time," Hoon replied. "And even if there was, where would they go? We're running out of safe havens." Security footage from a recently conquered world appeared on screen. It showed Drakari warriors moving through city streets, their movements precise and predatory. Unlike the chaotic violence of lesser species, the Drakari killed with calculated efficiency. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Kang, addressed captured civilians with cold arrogance. "Your worlds are now part of the Drakari hunting grounds," Kang announced in the recording. "Your continued existence depends on your usefulness. Serve. Well, and you may live as subjects. Resist and become prey." The room fell silent again as the footage ended. The Drakari weren't just conquerors, they were apex predators who viewed all other species as either tools or targets. Tai pulled up combat statistics from the last 3 engagements. "Our forces fought bravely, but the Drakari adapt too quickly to our tactics. Their natural combat instincts give them an edge that technology alone cannot overcome. Their society is built entirely around combat superiority," Jiho added. "They're young trained from birth in warfare. They're naturally armored, stronger than most species, and their neural reflexes are twice as fast as our quickest fighters." The tactical display updated, showing the Drakari fleet's projected path through the heart of Council space. If they took Sanctuary Station, the psychological blow to the Alliance would be devastating. Hoon brought up personnel files of the last Special Forces team that had attempted to infiltrate a Drakari command ship. All were listed as deceased. "We've lost our best operatives," he said quietly. The Kreshak Commandos, the Volari stealth team, even the Tundari Berserkers, all eliminated. Jiho pulled up an intelligence report. The Drakari are already preparing their next wave of expansion. Their shipyards are producing new warships at an accelerated rate. Tay studied the projections with growing dread. The Drakari expansion was accelerating. Intelligence suggested they were building toward something, a final push to eliminate organized resistance once and for all. "We need an advantage they haven't adapted to," Tay said, his voice heavy with the weight of command. "Something beyond our conventional tactics." As the meeting continued into the night, the reports grew more dire. The Drakari had developed countermeasures for every weapon in the Council's arsenal. Their warriors seemed to fight with an almost precognitive awareness of standard military doctrine. On the main viewer, a real-time feed showed the Drakari fleet advancing toward Sanctuary Station. The massive ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls bearing the battle scars of previous victories. At current speeds, Jiho calculated, they'll reach Sanctuary Station in 48 hours. Our defensive fleet can't get there in time. Tay looked around the room at the faces of his advisors and allies. Years of war had taken their toll. Hope was a dwindling resource, more precious than any tactical advantage. "There must be something we haven't tried," he said. "Some species or technology the Drakari haven't encountered and adapted to." Little did he know that, halfway across the galaxy, on a small blue planet considered too distant and primitive to matter, the solution to their desperate situation was about to present itself in the most unexpected form. The emergency council chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from 200 alien civilizations argued over their limited options. The fall of Sanctuary Station 3 days earlier had sent shockwaves through the Alliance. Over 1 million refugees had been lost when the Drakari fleet reduced the massive station to floating debris. Ambassador Sung stood patiently at the speaker's platform, waiting for the chamber to quiet. She was smaller than most representatives, her species known more for intellectual contributions than military might. When she finally spoke, her voice carried surprising authority. "Honorable Council members, while we debate, the Drakari advance." Continues, "I have a proposal that may sound unconventional." The chamber quieted as curiosity overcame despair. "My research team has been studying a previously overlooked species from a planet in the Outer Rim," Sung continued, activating the central holographic display. "They call their world Earth, and themselves humans." The display showed a blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Several council members scoffed audibly when the display shifted to show the humans themselves. "These are your saviors," called out Council Member Day, his voice dripping with skepticism. "They have no natural armor, no claws, not even enhanced senses. Look at them, they're practically defenseless." The images showed humans going about daily activities. They appeared small and fragile compared to most spacefaring species. Their skin lacked protective scales or plates, their teeth seemed inadequate for combat, and their muscle density appeared average at best. "I understand your skepticism," Sung replied calmly, "but I ask you to look beyond their physical limitations to something far more interesting: their history." The display shifted to show human conflicts throughout their development. Primitive battles with simple weapons gave way to increasingly sophisticated warfare. The council chamber grew quiet as the presentation continued through centuries of human combat evolution. "Unlike most species that developed toward peaceful cooperation as they advanced," Sung explained, "humans continued refining the art of warfare alongside their technological progress. They are unique in never having achieved lasting peace among their own kind." Intelligence Officer Hoon stepped forward with additional data. "My team has been monitoring their communications. These humans have developed over 30,000 distinct methods of combat. They call them martial arts, fighting systems designed to overcome stronger opponents." The display showed humans practicing various fighting techniques, using leverage and technique to compensate for physical disadvantages. "That's marginally interesting," admitted Day, "but the Drakari would still tear them apart in direct combat." "That's just it," Sung countered. "Humans rarely engage in direct combat when they can avoid it. Observe. The display shifted to show historical battles where smaller human forces defeated larger ones through strategy rather than strength. 1. Sequence showed humans using terrain to their advantage. Another displayed elaborate deceptions and ambushes. Their entire military history is built around overcoming superior forces, Hoon noted. Where most species develop standardized combat doctrines, humans constantly adapt and revise their approach. They've spent thousands of years fighting adversaries stronger than themselves, including each other. The holographic display showed human special forces training, soldiers enduring extreme conditions, adapting to rapidly changing scenarios, and employing unconventional tactics. Their training programs intentionally place them at disadvantages they must overcome, Sung continued. And perhaps most importantly, they excel at asymmetric warfare. The exact scenario we find ourselves in against the Drakari. Admiral Yu, commander of the remaining defense fleet, studied the presentation with growing interest. Their physical limitations might actually be beneficial. They've had to develop strategies precisely because they can't rely on natural weapons or armor. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives remained doubtful, while others saw a glimmer of hope for the first time in years. Even if this is true, Day challenged, they appear to be pre-FTL. How would they even help us? Transport their entire planet here? Sung shook her head. Earth is on the verge of developing their first interstellar drives. Their scientific understanding is surprisingly advanced for their technological level. I propose we make first contact and request their assistance. A primitive species fighting the Drakari, scoffed another council member. It's absurd. Is it more absurd than watching the rest of our worlds fall? Admiral Yu asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. My analysts have reviewed their military structures, Hoon added. Humans have specialized units called special forces that operate in small teams behind enemy lines. These units consistently achieve objectives deemed impossible. Against all logic, they succeed where direct military force fails. The display showed human commandos operating in extreme environments, deserts, Arctic regions, jungles and mountains. Their adaptability was remarkable. Most intriguing is their approach to problem solving, Sung continued. Where most species establish protocols and follow them, humans continuously improvise. The Drakari excel at countering known tactics, but how would they counter an enemy that doesn't follow tactical norms? The council debated through the night. As the emergency session entered its 14th hour, Admiral Yu made a decisive argument. We've tried everything within our understanding of warfare. We've lost half our territory and billions of lives. If there's even a small chance these humans offer something the Drakari haven't encountered, we must pursue it. The vote was closer than expected. By a margin of just 17 representatives, the Council authorized first contact with Earth. The following day, Diplomat Jin boarded the fastest scout ship in the remaining fleet. His mission was unprecedented, to approach a pre-FTL civilization and request their help in an interstellar war. As the ship accelerated toward Earth, Jin reviewed the human historical records again. One phrase from their military history resonated with him. The most dangerous species is the one fighting for survival. Humans had demonstrated this principle repeatedly throughout their violent history. Jin wondered if the Drakari, for all their natural advantages, had ever faced a truly desperate enemy, one with nothing to lose and everything to gain. His mission might be the Alliance's final gamble, but as the briefing concluded, he found himself feeling something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The scout ship entered FTL with Earth's coordinates locked in. Within days, humanity would learn they weren't alone in the universe. And shortly after that, the galaxy would learn whether humans were merely another prey species or something the Drakari had never encountered before. The hangar bay of Forward. Base Epsilon was crowded with alien observers when the human transport vessel docked. 2 weeks had passed since Diplomat Jin's return from Earth with shocking news. The humans had not only accepted the Alliance's plea for help, but had immediately mobilized their most elite military units for deployment. Veteran soldier Wu watched skeptically as the airlock cycled open. "These are our saviors," he muttered to his squadmate. "They look like unarmed civilians. The human contingent that emerged was indeed unimpressive by galactic standards. They stood a full head shorter than the average council species, with no visible natural defenses. Their combat suits appeared minimal compared to the heavy armor worn by most Alliance soldiers. Most concerning, they moved with a relaxed casualness that seemed inappropriate for warriors about to face the galaxy's most feared predators. Commander Park, the leader of the human forces, stepped forward to meet Admiral Yu. Unlike the elaborate greeting protocols observed by most species, Park simply extended his hand in the human gesture of shaking hands. "We came as quickly as we could," Park said. "My team is ready to deploy immediately." Admiral Yu seemed taken aback by the lack of ceremonial formality. "Don't your troops need time to acclimate to our environment, to study Drakari combat techniques?" Park shook his head. "We studied everything during our journey here. My people adapt quickly. We'd rather get to work than wait for the enemy to strike again." This directness unnerved many of the observing aliens, who were accustomed to extensive preparation rituals before combat operations. The humans, by contrast, were already unloading equipment and requesting tactical data. Communications. Specialist Un, a petite woman who seemed too fragile for combat, approached the Alliance Intelligence Center. "I need access to all Drakari communication patterns and encryption protocols," she requested. When told that Drakari codes were unbreakable, she simply smiled. "Everything can be broken if you look at it the right way." Within hours, the humans had established their own command center within the base. Alliance officers were surprised to find the humans making modifications to standard-issue weapons. When questioned, a human weapons specialist named June explained, "Your rifles are designed for consistency and reliability. That's good, but predictable. We're introducing randomized elements to make our weapons harder for the Drakari to counter." 3 days after their arrival, sensors detected a Drakari scout ship approaching a nearby supply depot. Despite protests that they needed more preparation time, Commander Park volunteered his team for the defense mission. "This is perfect," he insisted. "A small-scale engagement to test their responses." Admiral Yu reluctantly agreed, but insisted on sending experienced Alliance soldiers as support. As the mixed strike team prepared to depart, many alien officers placed unofficial bets on how quickly the humans would retreat when facing Drakari warriors in person. The supply depot was a critical waypoint for Alliance resources. If the Drakari established a presence there, they could strangle supply lines to 3 key systems. The defending force took up positions and waited for the inevitable attack. What happened next would be replayed in Alliance tactical academies for generations. When the Drakari assault team breached the depot's outer defenses, they moved with their typical precision, a coordinated hunting pack following established doctrine for clearing defended positions. They had executed this same battle plan countless times across conquered worlds, but the humans weren't where they were supposed to be. Instead of holding defensive positions as Alliance protocols dictated, the humans had scattered throughout the facility in seemingly random patterns. When the Drakari entered what should have been a fatal funnel, no defenders fired upon them. The ambush came instead from ventilation shafts above and maintenance tunnels below. The Drakari responded with textbook counter-ambush maneuvers, only to discover the humans had already relocated. Each time the predators adjusted their approach, the humans changed tactics entirely. From the command center, Alliance officers watched in astonishment as the battle unfolded. The humans weren't fighting according to any recognized doctrine. Their movements appeared chaotic, almost improvisational. "What are they doing?" demanded a senior tactical officer. "They're abandoning advantageous positions." Admiral Yu watched the tactical display with growing understanding. "They're not fighting the battle we would fight. They're forcing the Drakari to fight on human terms." The Drakari, accustomed to enemies who either stood their ground or fled in predictable patterns, found themselves unable to establish tactical superiority. When they employed their favorite flanking maneuver, they discovered the humans had deliberately left that flank open but mined the approach corridor. When the Drakari attempted to use their superior strength in close combat, the humans employed fighting techniques specifically designed to use the attacker's strength against them. Communications specialist Yun intercepted the Drakari battlefield transmissions. "Listen to this," she said, playing the translated audio for the command staff. "Enemy pattern inconsistent," reported a Drakari squad leader, his usual confidence replaced by confusion. Unable to predict movement or establish targeting solutions, for the first time in recorded history, the Drakari were forced to retreat from an engagement they had initiated. When the human team returned to base, they didn't celebrate their victory with displays of dominance as most species would. Instead, they immediately began analyzing the battle data, identifying weaknesses in their own performance. "The Drakari are fast learners," Commander Park noted during the debriefing. "They'll adapt to what they saw today, so we'll need to be completely different next time." This concept, that victory demanded constant evolution rather than perfection of established techniques, was revolutionary to Alliance military thinking. In the days that followed, more human forces arrived. Each specialized team brought unique approaches to combat. Some focused on psychological warfare, others on technological countermeasures. Most surprising to the Alliance observers was how readily humans embraced danger rather than avoiding it. "You must understand," explained Park to a group of Alliance officers. "Throughout our history, humans have rarely had the advantage of superior strength or natural weapons. We survived by outthinking predators, not outfighting them." As news of the successful defense spread through Alliance territory, something long absent began to emerge in war councils and civilian communities alike: hope. The Drakari had encountered many species in their expansion. They had fought the strongest, the fastest, and the most technologically advanced civilizations in the galaxy. But they had never faced an enemy who viewed disadvantage as an opportunity rather than a limitation, who had evolved not as apex predators, but as prey species who refused to remain prey. And that, as the Alliance was beginning to understand, made all the difference. The command center of the Alliance flagship hummed with activity as Captain Min addressed the assembled officers. 3 months had passed since humans joined the conflict, and the war had transformed in ways no one had predicted. "The Drakari have withdrawn from the Centauri sector," Min announced, updating the strategic display. A vast region previously, marked in hostile red, now glowed with the neutral yellow of contested space. "That's the third major withdrawal this month." Admiral Yu studied the display with cautious optimism. "They're consolidating their forces. The question is whether this represents retreat or merely reorganization." "I believe we're seeing something unprecedented," Min replied. "Look at these intercepted communications from their command ships." The translated messages revealed something shocking: uncertainty in Drakari battle planning. Their commanders were second-guessing tactical decisions, expressing concern about human unpredictability, and even questioning the wisdom of certain offensive operations. "They're experiencing strategic paralysis," Tactical Officer June explained. "The Drakari evolved as ambush predators. Their entire approach to warfare depends on being able to predict prey behavior. We've deliberately made ourselves unpredictable." The evidence was compelling. In recent engagements, Drakari forces had hesitated before committing to attacks. Their once flawless coordination showed signs of breakdown as human counter-tactics continually evolved. "It goes beyond military impact," communications specialist Yoon added. "Their social hierarchy is based on successful hunting. Leaders who fail to capture prey lose status. Our intelligence suggests their command structure is experiencing internal conflict for the first time in their history." The Alliance's growing success had not come without cost. Human casualties were significant, though far lower than anyone had projected. What surprised the Alliance observers was the humans' attitude toward these losses. "We understand the price of freedom," Commander Park had explained after a particularly brutal engagement that had claimed several human lives but secured a vital outpost. Each person here volunteered knowing the risks. This willing self-sacrifice for collective security was foreign to many Alliance species, whose evolutionary histories had emphasized individual survival. The humans' capacity to accept casualties while maintaining morale contradicted conventional understanding of combat psychology. More bewildering to Alliance officers was the humans' approach to captured Drakari. Rather than executing or imprisoning them as most expected, human intelligence teams subjected them to something they called psychological operations. In a secure section of Forward Base Epsilon, interrogator Suk sat across from a captured Drakari commander. Unlike traditional interrogations that relied on threats or coercion, she simply talked with the massive predator, asking questions about his homeworld, his offspring, his beliefs about the war. "Your kind fights without honor," the Drakari commander growled during one session. "Tell me what fighting with honor means to your people," Suk replied calmly. Through hundreds of such conversations, the humans assembled a psychological profile of their enemy more detailed than any the Alliance had compiled in decades of conflict. They discovered that beneath the Drakari's fearsome exterior lay a culture built around absolutes, strict hierarchies, unwavering traditions, and inflexible codes of conduct. This rigidity, humans realized, was both strength and weakness. They expect enemies to either fight directly or flee, Lieutenant Hyun explained during a strategy session. "When we do neither, when we retreat only to circle back, when we appear weak only to reveal strength, it creates cognitive dissonance they struggle to resolve." The humans leveraged this insight to develop increasingly sophisticated psychological warfare techniques. They deployed false intelligence designed to be captured. They executed partial retreats that baited Drakari forces into traps. They used minimal forces to suggest vulnerability, then revealed hidden strengths when the predators committed to attack. In one legendary operation, a small team led by Lieutenant Hyun infiltrated the Drakari command ship Inevitability during a major offensive. Rather than attempting to destroy the vessel, a suicide mission given its defenses, they simply reconfigured its communication systems to broadcast doubt and confusion across the Drakari fleet. For species that had never questioned their superiority, this engineered uncertainty proved more devastating than conventional weapons. The most significant breakthrough came 6 months into the human deployment. Analysis of captured Drakari suggested they possessed limited imagination. Their thinking was literal and direct compared to human cognition. This explained their difficulty adapting to human tactics, which often incorporated misdirection and deception. "They understand strategy and tactics," June observed, "but not trickery. Their evolutionary history never required them to deceive prey, only to overpower it." This insight led to Operation Mirror, the most ambitious plan yet conceived by human strategists. Rather than engaging the main Drakari fleet directly, Alliance forces launched simultaneous small-scale attacks across dozens of systems, each employing different tactics. Some used electronic warfare to suggest larger forces than actually existed. Others deployed dummy vessels to draw Drakari attention, while actual strike teams hit secondary targets. The Drakari response was chaotic. Unable to discern the true objective among many feints, their forces fragmented as commanders made contradictory decisions. For the first time, the predators appeared genuinely confused. Most telling was the capture of a Drakari subcommander during the operation's final phase. During interrogation, he admitted something previously unthinkable. "Your kind makes no sense to us," he told Suk, mandibles twitching in agitation. "You fight when you should flee. You retreat when you could win. You sacrifice yourselves for others with no genetic relation." He paused, yellow eyes narrowing. "You make us feel something we have never experienced before." "And what is that?" Suk asked. "Uncertainty," the Drakari replied. "Our kind has always known exactly what we are. Predators, conquerors, the dominant life form. But you humans, you make us question. Are we truly the apex species if we cannot understand how your minds work?" Word of this confession spread through Alliance forces like wildfire. The psychological impact was immense. The fearsome Drakari, who had terrorized the galaxy for generations, were experiencing doubts about their own supremacy. "This is the true turning point," Admiral Yu announced during a council briefing. "Not the territories reclaimed or the battles won, but this fundamental shift in the enemy's self-perception." As Alliance forces prepared for the final push toward Drakari core systems, humans introduced yet another revolutionary concept to interstellar warfare. The possibility that victory might not require the enemy's annihilation, only their recognition. The predator and prey categories were more fluid than they had ever imagined. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so crowded. Representatives from every alliance world stood shoulder to shoulder with military officers, civilian observers, and even a contingent of Drakari, the latter still an unsettling sight despite the ceasefire that had held for 28 days. The final battle for the Drakari homeworld had ended not with the expected bloodbath, but with something far more surprising: surrender. After Alliance forces bypassed the supposedly impenetrable outer defenses using tactics no Drakari strategist had anticipated, the Drakari High Command had done the unthinkable. They had requested terms. Now, as the peace conference entered its 4th day, the true challenge was becoming clear. Many Council species, having suffered decades of Drakari aggression, demanded harsh retribution. Some called for the complete dismantling of Drakari military capacity. Others suggested confining the entire species to their home system under permanent blockade. Human diplomat Du had listened patiently to these proposals, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts. When finally recognized by the council chair, she approached the central podium with unhurried steps. "Esteemed representatives," she began, her voice calm but carrying to every corner of the chamber, "I understand the desire for security. The Drakari have caused immeasurable suffering throughout this galaxy, but I ask you to consider not what feels satisfying in this moment of victory, but what will create lasting peace for generations to come." A murmur of discontent rippled through the assembly. "Easy for humans to speak of mercy," called out a representative whose world had been among the first conquered. "Your people haven't endured generations of occupation." Du nodded in acknowledgement of the pain behind those words. "You're right. We haven't suffered as you have. But human history is filled with conflicts that mirror this one. We've learned painful lessons about the aftermath of war." She activated the central display, showing historical images from Earth's past. Devastated cities being rebuilt, former enemies working side by side, gradual reconciliation across once uncrossable divides. "The harshest peace terms often sow the seeds of future conflict," Du continued. "When victors humiliate the defeated, they create not subjects but enemies who bide their time, nursing grievances until they're strong enough to fight again." The chamber fell silent as her words resonated with many who had studied the cyclical nature of interstellar conflicts. "The Drakari are predators, yes," Du acknowledged. "But predators can learn new behaviors when their environment changes. We understand this mindset because humans have spent our entire history overcoming our own predatory instincts." This statement caused confusion among the delegates. A Volari representative raised his translucent hand. "But humans aren't predators. You lack natural weapons and hunting adaptations." Du smiled. "Biologically, we're omnivores, but psychologically, humans have been the apex predators of our world for thousands of years. Our ancestors hunted species larger and stronger than themselves to extinction. We dominated our planet not through claws or venom, but through intelligence, cooperation, and tool use. The same advantages we brought to this conflict." She paced the platform, making eye contact with representatives from various species. "The difference is that we recognized our predatory nature and chose to temper it with compassion. We created laws, ethical frameworks, and rehabilitation systems. Not because we're naturally peaceful, but precisely because we understand how dangerous unchecked aggression can be." From the Drakari delegation, Supreme Commander Rim listened with narrowed yellow eyes. Unlike most of his kind, who sat rigidly in postures of barely contained tension, Rim leaned forward with evident curiosity. "What we propose," Du continued, "is not to punish the Drakari, but to help them evolve as we did, not through genetic modification or forced re-education, but by creating conditions where cooperation becomes more advantageous than predation." The specific proposal she outlined was revolutionary. Integrated settlements where Drakari would live and work alongside other species, cultural exchange programs, joint scientific ventures. Most controversially, she suggested including reformed Drakari in peacekeeping forces after appropriate training, using their natural protective instincts in service of galactic stability. "This isn't naivete," Du insisted when challenged. "The transition will be monitored, with safeguards at every stage. But isolating the Drakari will only reinforce their view of other species as prey. Integration, with proper boundaries, offers a path to genuine transformation. The debate that followed lasted for days. Many delegates remained skeptical, pointing to the long history of Drakari aggression as evidence that the species was inherently dangerous. Others, seeing the logic in the human approach, cautiously supported a modified version of the proposal. Throughout the deliberations, human scientist Han worked alongside former Drakari General Rim, developing detailed implementation plans. Their unlikely partnership became symbolic of the possible future being discussed in the council chamber. "Your species confuses me," Rim admitted during a late-night planning session. "You defeated us not by being stronger predators, but by being something else entirely, neither typical predator nor prey." Han nodded thoughtfully. "Humans evolved beyond simple categories. We can be ferocious when threatened, yet compassionate toward former enemies. We contained our predatory instincts without denying them. Can my people do the same?" Rim asked, genuine uncertainty in his usually confident voice. "I believe so," Han replied. "The Drakari adapted to every environment. They conquered. This is just another form of adaptation, social rather than physical." When the council finally voted on the peace terms, the human proposal passed by a narrow margin. The implementation would begin with small pilot programs, expanding gradually as trust developed. No one expected the process to be easy or quick, but for the first time, most delegates could envision a future where Drakari were partners rather than threats. As the conference concluded, Admiral Yu approached Do with a question that many had been pondering. "When you first arrived, we thought humans might be the most efficient killers the Drakari had ever faced. Instead, you've become their strongest advocates. Which represents the true nature of humanity?" Do considered this for a moment. "Both," she answered simply. "Humans can be terrifyingly effective at warfare because we understand violence so intimately. But that same understanding teaches us the value of peace. We know the cost of conflict better than most because we've paid it so often throughout our history." In the months that followed, integration efforts progressed with surprising success. Drakari young were especially receptive, forming bonds with other species that would have been unthinkable a generation earlier. Adult Drakari adapted more slowly, but many found unexpected satisfaction in protective roles that channeled their predatory instincts toward constructive purposes. Most remarkable was the cultural exchange that flowed in both directions. Drakari hunting rituals, stripped of their lethal elements, became popular sporting events throughout Alliance territory. In return, Drakari worlds embraced human concepts of rehabilitation and restorative justice, ideas that had seemed alien to their punishment-oriented society. 1 year after the peace conference, at a ceremony marking the opening of the first integrated scientific institute, Rim addressed an audience of former enemies with words that would be recorded in the annals of galactic history. "We Drakari believed ourselves to be the ultimate predators, only to discover a species that had transcended the predator-prey dichotomy altogether. Humans taught us that the truly evolved species is not the one that perfects its hunting abilities, but the one that recognizes when hunting is no longer necessary."